Oh. You're camouflaged. I want to move this tree fern a little bit to the right and a little bit into the bed, so essentially diagonally to the right away from me. The reason for that is because I want to move it a little bit away from the pathway through to the secret garden. People think that the roots are on the stem of a tree fern, and that's true to an extent, they are, but they are also in the ground. So I do need to dig a large root ball on this plant as I move it. The reason why people mention that the tree fern has roots on the stem is because they can absorb water through the stem and through the top, the bird's nest, which is full of leaves at the moment. So when you're watering the tree fern in the summer, when it needs it, you can water into the centre and it will run down the sides of the plant. In a few weeks' time, before the frost, we'll be wrapping this tree fern in straw. So we'll get some chicken wire and make a bulging kind of nest around it and fill the centre of it and the sides of it. The top 1 foot or 30 centimetres of this plant will be protected so the frost can't kill the plant, because they're not fully frost hardy. They'll tolerate minus figures but not double minus figures. I did lose one before. So I am going to use a spade and a shovel. Now, if you were asking what the definition of or the function of a spade and a shovel is, a spade is for digging. That's essentially digging soil that is firmed or compacted or hasn't been cultivated. It's for digging it and cultivating it. A shovel, which is the one on the right with the red handle, is for moving loose materials. But of course this one here, the Irish shovel, has a bit of a point on the front, a rounded front, and more of a point maybe if it was newer. And that's a bit of a hybrid, so you can dig a hole with it. But I'm going to use the spade first because it, particularly with this T-handle on the top, it makes a big difference to the digging. So I'm going to dig around this tree fern, and I'm not really sure how big the root ball is going to be, so I'm going to be cautious at first. I'm going to dig wide first of all. Some people will suggest that you dig a planting hole for the plant before you move it, so you can move it directly across and there's less shock. At this time of year, it probably doesn't matter. The reason why I'm not digging a planting hole first is because I kind of want to place it and see where it looks best, and then I'll dig a hole. I've got these 3 ferns to sit around the base and they should look good. I'll move them out of the way for the moment till I have the hole dug and this plant planted. So I am going to dig all the way around. So I've freed the root ball all the way around. This is woodruff, Gallium odoratum. Woodruff is, or sweet woodruff. It has a Nice fragrance, and it's a really good ground cover for dry shade. So I'm happy with the way that's come up. There's a good root ball in it, and I don't think I've damaged too many roots as I go. Some of these tree ferns lean. They're not necessarily all straight, so I'm trying to decide whether I want it straight or maybe lean it slightly this way, away from the tree, which would be away from the tree would be what they might naturally do to come towards some light. So I think it's probably in approximately the right position there. So that's where I'm going to dig my hole for it. I don't really want to break the fronds for now. The fronds are the collection of leaves. Because if we get a mild winter, those fronds will stay. If the winter is quite cold, they'll probably die off, but they can look great with those for the whole winter if they're let stay. So this is what I was saying about a spade being easier than a shovel. You can cut right down straight, and they are easier to dig a hole with. Once I've got it loose like this, and in fairness, most of this soil is fairly loose anyway, but once I've got it loose, I can start to use the shovel. And the advantage of the shovel then is that it will take more. The advantage of the shovel is that it will take more soil, so you can dig the hole faster. Because the air temperature is cooler. It's quite a nice day. It's a little bit sunny here. The sun is just going behind the house, but it's also quite cold, and the day length is shorter. So the plants have essentially on top gone into dormancy, but because the soil is warm from the fact that the summer has been radiating heat onto the surface, the soil has collected the heat, and soil temperature is warm enough to encourage some root growth, which is what you want. You want root growth but no top growth, which is what you will get in autumn. So the plant will establish before the spring, because if you plant in the spring, very soon after the spring is the summer, and immediately the plant is under pressure because of that. And then the roots, if they haven't fully established underneath, or at least established enough to take some water up, the plant becomes under serious pressure as a result of that. So I'm going to move this tree fern across. I think I've got a root of something else in here, because it's definitely not a root of the tree fern. kind of need to test and look at the plant. This one won't stand up on its own, I don't think anyway. So in order to see, maybe I'll put a spade behind it. It's a good idea to stand away from the plant and see how it looks. I think that's a little bit far back for me. I'm going to pull it a little bit forward. I think it needs to be straightened up a small bit, but that's kind of where I think it looks right. So that's where I'm going to plant this. So I'm going to start moving some soil back in around it. There we go. There we have it. Tree fern moved and replanted, and three smaller ferns around the base. I think these ones are Blechnums or Cytia. I can't remember. I'm gonna have to have a look again. I'm debating on whether I'll give this a water or not. The soil is quite wet as it is, so I'll think about that. You saw a tree of the same cultivated variety in Park House in the autumn video a few weeks ago, and that was Acer palmatum osakasuki. But the season starts earlier here, and this one is further ahead and has lost a lot of its leaves now. And if I'm honest, the colour wasn't spectacular this year. It kind of lost the leaves before it really got to anything, but you can see on a good year what it can be like, and last year it was a good year. It was amazing, the colour of it, blood red colour. Acer palmatum osakasuki. This is another 4 birch trees. These are ones that I did buy, but I bought them as tiny seedlings, and in the last 10-12 years they've gotten quite big, and I actually like them being crooked like this rather than being staked up and straight. I think it gives a much more natural appearance. But you can see that all 4 of these ones have a whiter bark, still very attractive. And if you really wanted to get the best out of these, you could do the same as I mentioned with the cherry tree. Get the pressure hose and wash them, or get a bit of soap and water and a nail brush, and you get that ghostly white colour, which might be appropriate to this time of year of Halloween. And they look great when the leaves are nearly gone at this time of year, and we've got this low down sunshine, which creates beautiful shapes and shadows and a clarity in the air. This tree is Cornice Controversa. It's known as the wedding cake. And I'm not sure whether you can see it from this angle very well, but it's got horizontal branches, and that's why it's called the wedding cake, because it's got layers or tiers of branches. Cornice Controversa, variegata, because it's a variegated one. And it's really nice with the leaves, but it's also really nice in the winter and in the spring, because the stems, the outer stems, are much more red in the winter, like a lot of dogwoods, or like some dogwoods. And then the buds are a greeny yellow, and they almost shine against it, and that's quite nice. It's a good, reasonably small tree for a garden. This one we got for our wedding, so that's about 13 years ago. So that's how old this tree is. And the same as in Park House, I've got this tulip tree, and I'll be waiting another 10 or 15 years for this to flower. The one in Park House has flowered. I planted that 24 years ago. This one is in about 12 years ago. The one in Park House, funnily enough, is actually a lot more yellow, a lot more advanced into the autumn, and it's looking really nice. This one in a couple of weeks, hopefully we'll have that bright yellow colour before it loses its leaves. But it's a great tree as well, because there are no other trees that have this shape leaf. What's known as a truncate leaf. Doing a bit of planting of some things here for dried apple shade. So this is Brunera, and Brunera definitely likes, it will take whatever amount of shade you give it, and it's happy in the dry. And these ones here, which are pulmonarias, doesn't look great now, but earlier on in the year it would have had more silver leaves, this particular variety. A lot of the lungworts have spotty leaves, but it likes dry shade, and then a lot of the ferns the same, they like a dry shade, like this here, Cythea. And the grasses are not quite as much in the shade now at the moment, so they're okay where they are. And this is a cultivated nettle, essentially, dead nettle, Lamium variety, probably Lamium maculatum. And then the geraniums always like a bit of shade as well. Back to the trees for a minute. This is a really nice dwarf variety. Or should I say it's a dwarf? It's a dwarf version because it has been grafted onto a dwarf rooting stock. The tree is going to be covered in these beautiful crab apples, and it's called Malus, which is the same as the apple tree, Malus, but this variety is a crab apple and it's called Red Sentinel, and it gets absolutely laden with these beautiful tiny apples, and they are quite nice to eat. I mean, they're very sour, but you could make a jelly, you could use them for flavouring a cider or a wine if you wanted to do that, and they can make jams with them as well. Various different things. They're quite sweet but sour at the same time, and a little bit tanniny. Tannin is kind of the effect that makes your tongue feel a bit dry, like a detergent or something. Anyway, this one is dwarf and it sits here really nicely into this area. Perennials are looking quite good still, and you can see there's a difference in the look of this than in the summer, because the sun is kind of coming more sideways onto the bed, and it catches the sides of all the leaves. It gives a really nice effect to the look of the bed. And this dahlia, cactus type, is doing really well still. As I said, will do well up to the first frosts, or not even the first frost, but until we get a heavy frost. The nerines, which traditionally come out middle to the end of September, are still doing quite well. So they're in autumn flowering, which is rare enough